Welcome to 5 after midnight, where darkness is upon us, and so are those that lurk within its shadows. Number 1.
This didn't happen to me, but it happened to my parents. This was 29 or so years ago, and my mom was pregnant with my oldest sister. Mom and Dad were heading to the hospital for a pregnancy checkup. My mom was like 35 weeks pregnant. While driving there, my dad inadvertently cut off a trucker. This trucker got pissed as shit and called up his trucker buddies to come help him fuck up my dad. So now my dad is being boxed in on the highway between 4 semis with a very pregnant woman freaking out beside him. Driving starts to get very dangerous, so he pulls over, but stays in the car while the truckers, who also pulled over, got out and started banging on the car and screaming obscenities and threatening my mom and dad. Dad kept his cool, however, and managed to point out that his wife was pregnant and that they were heading to the hospital. The truckers backed off after that, especially because I think they thought my mom was actually in labor. But pretty much they both almost got the shit beat out of them.
Number 2.
When I was a sophomore in high school, a friend used to drive me home. One day we went to a record store with 2 other friends, and on the way back to drop me off, this guy in a truck passed us like an asshole, narrowly missing our car and oncoming traffic. We decided it would be fun to follow him for a bit. So he turns onto another road shortly after and immediately pulls up to a mailbox and starts retrieving his mail. As we pass him, all 4 of us flip him off out the window and continue driving down the road. About half a mile later, we see the same vehicle driving insanely fast behind us. He tailgates us for a bit while we start to panic a little. We start to slow down for a stop sign, and the guy whips around us and cuts us off, slamming on his brakes in front of us. We wait for just a moment, and he steps out of his car with a crowbar. We drive around him, but there's a stop sign in front of us, so we had to pause briefly. The guy runs towards my door, which was the rear passenger door, and grabs it for when my friend takes off. We're flying down this road, hoping to lose him. We make another turn onto a really busy street, and we think we've lost him. We turn again and drive normally for a few miles, and at this point we're convinced we're safe. We pull up to another intersection and are waiting in the right turn lane when we look behind us, and 2 or 3 cars behind us in the same lane is the same dude in the turning lane, flashing his headlights on and off. We make our turn and speed down the road, but so does the other guy. He speeds around and slams on his brakes again, forcing he just wants to talk to us. So he's straddling both lanes of the road and gets out of his car with his crowbar in hand and a terrifying look on his face. My friend drives off the road, gets around the dude, and we speed away. He, of course, does the same thing and is driving like a fucking maniac. But so are we, so we maintain a bit of a lead on him. We make another turn and there's a school bus in front of us, just about to stop. We speed around it just in time for the bus's stop sign to extend, and for some reason, the dude actually stops behind the bus, and we speed off. We were close to another friend's house, so we pull into their driveway and into the open garage. We're all terrified at this point, so we run inside and watch out the window for the asshole. He did drive past the house, but thank God we were parked in the garage, so he didn't see the car. That day we learned, don't fuck with people, they might be crazy.
Number 3.
This happened about 3 months ago. Driving back from my girlfriend's house at 3 a.m. on the streets north of Atlanta. I pull up to a red light when I see a beat-to-hell 90s white Buick that wants to turn right onto the road that I was on, so that he would be in front of me. The light is green for him, but instead of turning onto the road, he just stops. Thinking something was strange, I waited until my light was green and I headed through the intersection. As soon as I pass, he gets right up on my ass. The next light is red and I come to a stop. He proceeds to get into the right turn lane and stop right next to me. I look over and I see 4 grown black men, all wearing red bandanas. Me being a 19-year-old white kid, I get a little uneasy and take my foot off the brake. Then the driver of the Buick pulls up a 9mm to show me, and I just take off. Driving around 100 in a 45 because VTEC kicked in, and he is trying to catch up. Meanwhile, we are running red lights every 1/8 of a mile. We both get up to a major intersection, and I bank hard right and he doesn't follow. I didn't notice the adrenaline rush until I got to my friend's house because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. At the end of the day, I might have run away from a gang initiation in Atlanta because of VTEC.
Number 4.
I was out drinking with 2 friends. One of these friends had introduced us to 2 girls he knew, who we met up with there. It was a pretty boring night, so I just wanted to get home. The 2 girls said that they could drive us home. I didn't think much of it since I hadn't seen one of them drink all night. I was almost sober in the car, and pretty soon I found out that they had both been drinking and smoking weed as well, which was before they met up with us, and they were even drinking in the car. The girl was in a pretty powerful AMG Mercedes-Benz, driving at about 100 kilometers an hour in a 60 kilometers an hour zone, drinking, texting, calling, and talking to a friend, smoking a cigarette, not paying attention to anything. I was seriously freaking out, especially because no one else in the car felt that this was fucking stupid. Then I see it, like a 200 meters in front of us. In the car, there are people on the road, and the car is stopped in our lane. I showed at her that there's a car stopped in front of us and she has to change lanes. At first she doesn't listen, then she swerves over to the other lane at the last second while honking at the people in the other car, while her friend shouts out the window and puts up the middle finger. I seriously felt scared for my life then. I couldn't wait to get out of that fucking death car. I'm never going in a car with a drunken driver ever again. And if somehow I do get into another car with a drunken driver, like this time with me not knowing, I'm going to get out, and instantly.
Number 5.
I went to college in Washington, and I'm from Los Angeles. I'd make the 22-hour drive to and from school during breaks. This happened on a no-sleep drive to school after winter break my sophomore year. I'm driving through a pass summit at 2 in the morning, and it's snowing pretty heavily. I've been on the road since 11:30 a.m., so I'm trying desperately not to fall asleep. I slow to about 35 miles per hour and struggle to get up the damn mountain without crashing. Suddenly, in my headlights, I see the right side railing has severely been crumpled, and my eyes naturally follow it a bit further down to the road to see a white Ford Explorer flipped on its side, wheels still spinning, and glass and dirt and wood everywhere. I audibly whisper, "Oh shit," and I pull my car up behind. I rush out of the car and see a bloody arm dangling out the driver's side window. The car is on its side. I call out, but there is no answer, so I take off my jacket and shoes. Don't ask, I wasn't thinking properly. And climb up onto the car door. I look down through the driver's side window and see a youngish man still strapped in his seat. His head is bleeding pretty badly, but his arm is a lot worse. It apparently got caught in the window as the car was rolling, and the soft underside of his left arm is still embedded in the glass of the window, and there is blood gushing everywhere. I call the ambulance, but they tell me it'll be a while before they get there, and ask me if I know basic first aid. I tell them yes, and that I'll call them back as soon as I can stop this guy's bleeding. I run to the trunk of my car and grab my big Maglite flashlight and a rag and dash back to the car. I slowly grab his arm and pull it off the glass, but he barely notices, just kind of groans. With the handle of the Maglite, I scrape away the rest of the glass in the window and take a large shard of glass out of his arm so I can staunch the bleeding. I don't want to move him from his current position, so I press the rag to his arm as it is, but the bleeding just will not stop. It's quite literally spurting from the wound. I look to see if he's hurt anywhere else. His left leg looks badly broken, and his nose and face don't look good either. I take off my belt and wrap it around the rag to make a makeshift tourniquet and tie it hard. I don't want to completely cut off his circulation because I don't want to be responsible for an amputation, but that's the least of his worries. He's going into shock, so I have to try and keep him awake for as long as possible. I'm sitting in this car in the freezing cold, trying to stop the bleeding in this guy's arm with one hand and trying to get in contact with the paramedics with the other. I'm shaking like hell out of fear, and it's cold, and it's been about 15 minutes, and I'm wondering why there are no cars passing by, when I realize that there are no commercial vehicles at this time of night, and that all the truckers are stuck a couple miles back at a mandatory weigh-in station. Great. Finally, at about 25 to 30 minutes after the call, the ambulance and fire truck come blaring up the slope. They take the guy into the ambulance and rush him out of there for an emergency blood transfusion and treatment. The medics give me some hot cocoa, which I promptly vomited back up, and some blankets. They test me for shock and start asking me questions that I don't know the answers to. Questions like, where does he live? Was he drinking? How fast was he going? I don't know. After about 20 minutes of questioning, they take my contact information and let me go. They said that he would probably have bled to death if I hadn't been lucky enough to see him, because there was literally no other cars around. They tell me that the guy's in stable condition and that they'll let me know how he is. I get in the car and I realize I'm a ridiculous mess. My clothes are soaked with this stranger's blood, and my socks are stiff with frozen blood. My face, hands, arms, even hair have blood and dirt and glass and leaves stuck all over. I decide that I don't want to drive in and show up at my friend's house looking like something out of a bad slasher film, so I decide to pull into the next gas station to use the restroom. I walk into the store, expecting a very surprised clerk on duty. What I didn't expect was for him to gape open-mouthed at me for a few seconds, then reach behind his counter and pull a gun on me. I nearly wet my pants. Granted, I was wearing jeans and a white shirt and I was completely covered in blood, but why is his first response to shoot me? I throw my hands in the air, screaming, "Don't shoot, don't shoot," and try to explain to him what happened. I always thought I spoke well under pressure. Well, I don't. The first reasonable thing that popped out of my mouth was, "Don't worry, it's not my blood." That helped calm him down. You know how during the most extreme conditions your brain does the weirdest things? I actually laughed out loud, which really didn't help my case, because the thought that kept running through my head was, well, at least if he shoots me, the ambulance won't take 30 minutes to get here this time. After a while, he puts the gun away and is so sorry for the misunderstanding that he lets me use the employee bathroom to wash up. I have a few small cuts on my arms and legs, but I seem fine other than that. Now, if my heart would stop exploding. After an eternity of scrubbing and getting dried blood out from under my fingernails and throwing the clothes away in the dumpster and wiping the car down and shampooing my hair, I end up sitting in the parking lot with my face in my hands for a good long time before I get back into the car and drive on. I'm not sleepy anymore, so I end up making the drive all the way home in one piece. As an afterthought, while I was waiting for the ambulance to come, I was so scared that I didn't really think about what was happening to me. In retrospect, I was sitting in the freezing snow at 2 a.m. on a deserted mountaintop with a potential bloody corpse, with no one around. Traumatic? Oh yes.